Hi, my name's Alex. I'm a tutor at HSQE. In this video, I'll be explaining the 7 common mistakes we notice students making when completing the IOSH Safety, Health and Environment for Construction Site Managers Risk Assessment. Not only will this video assist you in completing your course, it will also help in completing risk assessments out in the real world.
Number 1. Using your own risk assessment form. So let's get into the first common mistake students make. Regularly, students submit the risk assessment in the template of their own organisation. It is allowed, but it might not meet the requirements as described in the project instructions document. To avoid this, use the form provided with the course. This form is designed specifically to meet the project's criteria and ensure you cover all necessary aspects. Or if you prefer to use your own form, check it meets the requirements described in the project instruction document. This will ensure that all aspects of the risk assessment are addressed to attract the most marks it can. So number 2, not supplying 4 separate hazards. We often see risk assessments that do not have 4 separate hazards, which causes them to lose many marks. This is a correctly filled out risk assessment. There are 4 separate hazards here. Working near old roof lights, falling materials, asbestos, unauthorised access to work site. This is an incorrectly filled out risk assessment. In this example, the 2 hazards identified are too similar. As they are too similar, the first hazard would gain marks, but the second would get no marks at all. It is important that the hazards identified are completely different. To prevent your hazards being too similar, identify hazards from totally different categories, which can be found in the course materials, or try to identify hazards that may not be immediately obvious. So number 3, not supplying hazards that require additional controls. The hazards need to have additional controls in order to gain marks. The example here shows when a hazard has been chosen that does not require additional controls. This loses marks as we need to see that the concept of re-evaluating risk rating after control measures are applied is understood. To ensure this is avoided, make sure all the hazards you have identified are not currently adequately controlled and require additional control measures. So number 4 is leaving gaps in the risk assessment. It is crucial that all parts of the risk assessment are filled out to gain the best marks. Sometimes boxes are left out, like in the example here. This could be any box, such as the LCR rating or current controls. This can be as the assessment was submitted before being fully completed or uncertainty of what should go in the box. Double check your assessment before sending it in, and if you are unsure what needs to go in a box, speak with a colleague who completes risk assessments, review the course materials, or contact us for advice. So number 5 is missing the review date. Not entering a review date or entering it incorrectly will lose marks. The review date box can be found at the bottom of the risk assessment. The review date is when the risk assessment will next be reviewed. Often, students drop marks by leaving it blank, or it is filled with the date when the assessment was completed. To ensure you gain the mark, add a review date and make sure it is in the future. Review dates on risk assessments act as a useful reminder to ensure that they are frequently checked to make sure they are still suitable and sufficient. 6 is calculating LCR. LCR must be entered and correctly calculated to gain marks. L is for likelihood, C is for consequence, and R is for risk rating. They are described in detail in the course. Sometimes these are left blank or not calculated correctly. It must be filled out and calculated correctly to gain marks. Finally, number 7, who will implement/monitor controls and when. Often, the person completing the assessment will put themselves as monitoring or actioning the additional control measures, which isn't always correct. The action or monitoring by when also can have errors when it has not been understood. This is what the column should look like. The example shows a good understanding of who will monitor or undertake the action with the relevant workplace roles identified. It also shows the specific different timescales for each of these actions to be taken or monitored by.
I hope you found this video useful in completing the risk assessment for your IOSH Safety, Health and Environment for Construction Site Managers course. Remember, with a little bit of care and attention to detail, you can avoid making these mistakes. Not only will this video help you pass this course, it will also assist you when completing any risk assessments in the future.